Saunders, I've asked to interview you because you wrote a best-selling book in 1971 called The Family. You've come out with a new edition. You've added 5 chapters, basically enhancing what was already there. You've come out in paperback, and I want to thank you for this opportunity, but I want to begin by quoting something that you said.
Yes.
Way back on page 410, your new edition part. You described some rather bizarre, sadistic that you have of Sharon Tate, of her body. That let the public read it for themselves. I know it's not easy for you to hear that again, but you make a comment. To this day I am horrified when I recall that image. It was then I realized I had to reveal the Manson family as it really was, and to describe the murders in a way that would tell for all time what these people were about. Would you amplify on that a little bit?
Well, when you write a book on a crime, a murder, you have to make a basic decision as to how much intimate and even horrifying information you provide to the reader. And I have a double mind about that kind of information and really what effect it has on people. But after...
What do you mean I have a double mind?
I have a divided mind about it,
Okay.
in that I'm not, I don't personally like to read that kind of writing. There are a lot of people that do, or a lot of people to whom it's not a problem. But there is a school of thought that says if you print all that violent language, that it does have negative reverberations. I don't know how much, and I've never done any scientific study about it, but I was troubled by the question of how much detail to go into. But when I saw that, I was in a restaurant during the Tate LaBianca murder trial in the summer of 1970, and the person with whom I was having lunch in the Ambassador Hotel, I believe, tossed this photograph across to me. It was the...
Without explanation or reason, he just brought it out.
Well, he was a good friend of mine.
Put it in front of you.
He was a friend of mine, and he could do something like that without me getting upset.
Did he do it to shock you?
No, he was giving me information. He was a source. It was an official source I had. And but it was the most horrifying thing I had ever seen since I saw my mother in the coffin in Missouri in 1957. And
then are you saying he was with a law enforcement agency that had access to this?
He was with an yes. He was not a. He was with a. He was an official source.
You'd rather not identify the source that gave you the photo.
Right. I don't want to.
But it was horrifying.
It was the worst thing I ever saw. So that I had filing cards. I had to cover it up and look at it.
In partial.
So I didn't want to look at the whole thing. I got about a 2-second glimpse of it as it was, and then I couldn't take any more. So I did it section by section and memorized it. I can see it at will, unfortunately, in my brain anytime I want. To this day, it's
and you don't want to?
I'm not. I don't want to. No.
The Manson family was charged with 9 murders. You've got Gary Hinman, the 5 at the Tate house, Sharon Tate's house. You've got the LaBiancas the following night. You've got Shorty Shea. 9 that they were prosecuted for. The interesting thing is, murder, for example, when the gun jammed on Tex Watson at the killing of Sharon Tate and the others, when he awakened Wojtek Frykowski and Jay Sebring was brought into the living room, when the gun misfired, he had seen that happen before, Tex Watson had. It was not uncommon for that buntline special with a 9-inch barrel to misfire. In fact, didn't Charles Manson point that at a black man, and the black man says, "Who do you think you are?" And then it misfired again, and the black man said, "You can't kill me with that thing," and then it went off and it killed him. Murder was a way of life at the Manson family, is that right?
Well, he seriously wounded Bernard Crowe in early July of '69, but he survived. In fact, he still has the bullet in his...
Is that right?
Yes. Mr. Crowe did, Mr. Crowe did survive. And Manson shot him, I believe, with the same buntline special that was later used in the Polanski Tate residence. And yeah, Manson shot this black dope dealer and then bent over and kissed his feet and said, "I love you, brother," and left, thinking he was dead.
Mm-hmm.
But he survived. He testified it later at the trial.
That's a strange man, Manson.
He's one of the stranger.
One of the stranger. Did you ever interview Mr. Crow?
I did not, but he testified at the trial.
Mm-hmm.
I recently tried to reach him, but he is still very ambulatory and keeps his mailing addresses hopping along its horse. Last time I heard last year, he was in San Diego.
You gave some information in your book, The Family, the new 5 chapters, that dispelled the myth and the rumor around Shorty Shea's death. You're well aware that it was rumored that he had been decapitated and his body had been cut up into pieces. Would you relate how they come to find that body and the fact that it was not decapitated? I'm recalling that it was someone in jail that made a phone call and said, would you like to know where Shorty's buried? And basically, they found him where they said he would be.
Well, there was this great team of homicide officers for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. There was Sergeant Gleason, Sergeant Whiteley, and Deputy Gunther. And these guys stayed on the these guys stayed on the Shorty Shea case for 7 or 8 years. Very, very unusual for a homicide team just to stay on top of it. Anyway, basically they had a young man named Grogan, who was part of the team that killed this guy.
Now, Steve Grogan is Clem.
Clem, he's a scramblehead, Clem.
They called him the idiot.
He was the one that I would have thought would have never been released from jail.
But he is released.
He's out. He's a house painter in the San Fernando Valley and enjoyed the support of Judge Burton Katz, who felt he was rehabilitated enough. And it was sort of the deal he made to get out. He told this legendary team of Sheriff's Department homicide detectives where Shea was, and 8 years after Mr. Shea unfortunately died, they went in there, these cops, and dug all day at the shale of a edge of a cliff of a steep bank at the Spawn Movie Ranch, and found Mr. Shea, and it did seem that his skull was attached. So I asked Sergeant Gleason, now retired, why it was that rumor was spread, and he felt that it was just to scare the people and keep them in line, you know. And they might have hacked, you know, with a skeleton. You could they could do a lot of damage without actually severing the spinal cord.
Do you think it's possible, Ed, that it wasn't just to scare the family members to keep them in line? Do you think it's possible that in fact it was someone else who was decapitated, because they talk often about it, and that body's yet to be found?
Could be.
It's a possibility.
Absolutely. They went into a murder frenzy there for a number of months, and they could have killed a lot of people.
Tex Watson says at his parole hearings that he's a changed person, that he killed on those 2 nights, that he in fact was the leader. But you're aware, as I am in my research, that at the Barker Ranch, Charles Manson had Tex Watson go up on the roof or some high elevation place and watch the police as they were coming around and snooping at that time, and said kill him. Tex Watson was indeed willing to kill again. Is that true?
Well, this was at the end of September 1969. There had been some police officers come to this remote desert ranch, and we are talking remote. We are talking 40 miles from the nearest phone. We are talking 5,000 or 6,000 feet up in the Panamint Mountains above Death Valley.
You've been there.
Yes, and we are talking rural, remote, vast, you know, out of the way. So these cops were showing up. So Manson assigned Watson to crawl into a kind of a recess in the ceiling of the porch and wait for this guy with the shotgun all night and kill him when they came.
And then I think Watson had no qualms about doing that, did he?
He did stay up there all night with a shotgun. They did not show up, so the next day he vamoosed. He split and went back to Texas.
Or went to Hawaii, surfed a little bit, and then went back to Texas, where he was later arrested.
Yeah, you know more than I on that. Basically, he got out of Goler Wash, which was the remote wash where they were. He drove away and fled the scene. But I guess he was, at least for that one night, willing to
do it again.
Willing to kill for Charlie.
You knew a lot of the different family members during the trial, I understand. You interviewed Sandra Good.
No, a lot of times, yeah.
A lot of times?
Well, I went out to the Spawn Ranch, and
How well did you know him? First name basis?
Well, I was writing for the underground newspaper, the Los Angeles Free Press. I covered the trial. I had an assignment from Esquire magazine and a book contract from Dutton, so I was, but I also had what would be called counterculture credentials. I had a rock band in the 60s. I was quite a wild young man.
Kind of a radical rock band, I hear.
It was a radical, you could call
Real radical.
You could call it, it was controversial for its day, although if you go see Rodney Dangerfield, it's very pale compared to Mr. Dangerfield or or other acts. You see, anyway, I don't want to argue about my rock band, but basically I had credentials as a member of the counterculture. So I was sort of, they'd asked me to sing for them, you know, but I never did. But so I had access, let's put it that way, and so I had not known them before they were arrested. But
So during the trial, you had access to family members?
Yeah, I went out there. I camped out in Death Valley with them. I went out on some of their documentary film stuff they were doing. I had dinner with them. I went out on garbage runs with them.
You were a Manson family guru?
No, I was not.
A follower?
No, I was not a follower at all.
Just there as a journalist
I was
with
there
credentials?
to get information. You know, I was an investigative journalist. I made no deals with anybody. They knew I was writing a book. I wrote a weekly column for the Free Press. And I wanted to give them a fair shake, because it's America. You're presumed innocent until you're found guilty. And I was willing to assume they were innocent and learn that they were guilty. And then I quickly learned that they were more than guilty.
Did you find that out while living with the people, while running around garbage runs? I mean, did you come to those conclusions?
Well, they like to talk a lot about stabbing, you know, but that was the first clue, when they kept talking about knife wounds and stuff.
Who would they be in particular?
Well, you know, people in these, there was this, the viewer would know that they stayed at this movie set where they
Spawn
made,
Ranch.
called the Spawn Movie Ranch, where they made these grade B westerns. They also made things like Marlboro commercials there. And it was a regular ranch with horses and so forth, cowhands. They lived there. And they continued to live there after Manson and the others were arrested for murder. These other people kept living there. So you'd go visit these people in this very surreal, you'd think you were landing on Mars or something, because it was like a western town from 1880, and there was a jailhouse and a bunkhouse and a saloon. And you would have these communal meals where everybody would sing in this thing called this Longhorn Saloon. So, I mean, it was very surreal. Anyway, I would go there and
What drugs did you observe while you were there?
drugs?
Drugs.
Oh, I don't know.
Marijuana?
Probably just pot.
LSD?
No, I never saw any LSD. They did smoke pot. But I thought, but the day I learned that they were really bad news is I went to camped out in Death Valley, and I slept all night with in a van with Steve Grogan.
You slept with Steve Grogan in a van?
You know, we were both
the idiot, Clem?
Well, yeah, I mean, he was this kid, and it was very cold up 5,000 feet. I was dressed just like this, and I was freezing. So I figured, you know, I'm going inside the van. So Clem was in there, and then, so, you know, and then I called up Deputy District Attorney Burton Katz the next day to ask him some questions, because I had lines of communication with the prosecutors, and I was getting information from everybody I could. So he said, "You stayed all night in Death Valley with Clem?"
That's my
I
reaction.
said, "Don't you know that he chopped off Shorty Shea's head?"
And that was believed at the time.
And I said, "No." And I said, "Oh, yeah, you know." So I told my wife, you know, and she, you know, so.
You believe, having known them, you've certainly laid your credentials down that you knew the family members during the course of the trial.
Yes, not before. Only after they were arrested.
You believe that there's a possibility, I want to clarify this, that there is a distinct possibility that there may be unsolved murders related to the Manson family that's never been prosecuted. Possibility.
Yeah, there are certain strange deaths that...
Let's talk about those. Let's say the Zodiac killers. I understand charge cards receipts show that some of the Manson family members were indeed in the Northern California area around San Francisco at that time. You believe that it's possible that the Zodiac could or could not be
Well,
some of the family?
there was this strange killer in San Francisco called Zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
And he was active from 1963 till I think the late 60s or very early 70s. And there was a high-level investigation by the Inyo County District Attorney's Office and other jurisdictions into the possibility that there might be some connection between some of the Zodiac killings and the Manson group. I don't think they found any connection. I think that the key was that they were killing these people and writing in blood on the wall. And in other words, there was a member of the Manson family, Beausoleil, that killed somebody and wrote in blood on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
Bobby Beausoleil?
yes, a couple of weeks later, there were these. He was arrested, and one of the strands of the Tate LaBianca murders was that they wrote in blood on the wall to do a copycat thing to make the police believe they'd gotten the wrong person. Well, a few months later, there was a murder in San Francisco done by a Satanist named Stanley Baker that they wrote in blood on the wall, and they tried to blame it on Zodiac. They had the words written. It was this famous, well-known San Francisco craftsman named, well, it doesn't matter what his name is, but anyway, he was a craftsman. He died, and they wrote in blood on the wall, Satan saves, and then Zodiac, and the Zodiac symbol, which was a circle with the crosshairs. And I always wondered if, since it was later shown that it was a Satanist who was connected to a cult near Monterey, that might have been also a copycat thing to throw the trail off. That's the only real Zodiac connection I could think of, but it was not a Zodiac murder. And I interviewed Frank Fowles, the Inyo County District Attorney, and he did not, they apparently did not find any provable connection between this guy Zodiac and any member of the Manson family. But there are other killings which I could briefly expound on. And that
Before you go to that, let me ask you this. This is a quote in Helter Skelter.
Sure.
So many of my friends are getting knocked off for reasons I don't even know about. That's a quote from a family member. Murder was common. There was a person that was related to Sandra Good, her husband. He was murdered in London.
He may have been murdered.
May have been murdered. What were the circumstances, as you best recall, on that London death? They said it was suicide. Murder was ruled out, and he was the husband of Sandra Good, but wasn't there some other people in that community at that time, such as Bruce Davis?
Well, I think the best way to understand that particular death is to look at what happened in the fall of 1969. Is that the Manson group had killed a bunch of people, and they had to get out of town. They had to get out of L.A. They moved to Death Valley again, where they had previously lived, and they set up this end-of-the-world Armageddon group roaming around Death Valley in dune buggies and handing out pot to the kids in Death Valley, which was their terrible mistake because, that's a very conservative area. Anyway, they were up there, and then they got arrested for stealing. And then right around that same time, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department had figured out that these people were the ones that killed the people at the Tate house and at the LaBianca house. So Manson knew this, and he assigned two of his key followers to, when they were released on bail. They wouldn't release Manson on bail because he was a federal parolee who was being charged with associating with known felons. So he had trouble. He had a parole detention, and and his bail was real high. So he was in. His followers were out. He assigned them to be his eyes and to squash any data about the crimes. So that's when people started dying.
So we don't know how many people died.
No, there was a guy named Christopher Tape.
Well, we just hold on that question. We'll change to yourself.
anyway, what I can do is do a brief précis of, without boring you, of some of these things, and get to Pew.
Good.
See, Pew, see, it has to do with Davis. See, because Davis is the Davis is the one that probably.
Suppressor on. It probably won't make a lot of difference, but
Okay.
it does outside. It's incredible. Okay, and I know you'll never get it back the same, but it doesn't matter. Push that replay button, if you will, and you can see what that's doing. You got it on?
It's on now.
Review. I'm sorry. I think there's a yellow review button. Is it on the side over here? On this other side where all this gadgetry is, or is it up on top?
Yes, over here.
Okay, push the review. It'll give you about 10 frames, just so you can see quality.
Okay, that's perfect.
Okay.
Do you want me to
yeah.
go back and?
Yeah, why don't you go back and reask your
I want to bring up again just the possibility of the Sandra Good's husband in London,
All right.
because I understand at that time, by my research,
What,
that Joel Dean Pugh, are we rolling?
We're rolling now.
Oh, happiness.
I have prepared
Okay.
to speak at length about Pew, but
Okay, let
it's all
me.
inner.
Okay,
You do it.
let me
You're the
start
boss.
here, and then you
do
then
what
can-
you want.
Well, okay, let's start it here. It's
Fine.
my understanding that when Sandra Good's husband died, it was charged off as a suicide. Murder was ruled out, but I understand also that Bruce Davis was in London or Europe at that time, during the time frame. So there is a possibility. I'm not saying he did or did not do it. I don't have that evidence. But Ed, there is a possibility that Bruce Davis, who now is a chaplain's assistant at the California Men's Colony, killed someone he's not been charged with. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, it's true that Mr. Pugh died strangely in London. Again, there was writing in blood on the wall, something about
Sandra Good's husband.
Yes.
And she's on
she
parole.
used the name Sandra Pugh.
Mhm.
So this guy named Joel Pugh, who had been peripherally involved with the family, had moved to London in the fall of '69,
Mm-hmm.
had checked into this hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and Bruce Davis, after he was released from jail in Death Valley, spent a few weeks in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. In
Then-
the sewers?
No,
Living
that
in
was
the
later.
sewer? But he did later live in the
Later
sewers.
lived in the sewers, but then he was hanging out in L.A., and there was at least 2 strange deaths in L.A. at the same time.
At the time that he was hanging
And
out
then
in L.A.?
he was, according to the State Department report to the Sheriff's Office, he went to London and was in England at the time that Pugh allegedly killed himself, although there was writing in blood on the wall of this hotel, which
It's a little
was
strange for a suicide victim, isn't it?
strange. It does happen, rarely happens, but given the pattern of deaths where writing was done on the wall, and the fact that Pugh had been associated with the family, leads one to be very suspicious that it was not a warning sign, because they later found a letter in a motel room in Death Valley from a family member that said, to words to the effect, I wouldn't want what happened to Joel Pugh to happen to me.
Yes. I was going to read that to you.
Oh, excuse me.
No, no problem. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
But that was true, that was written in a hotel room. So there was the implication that very possibly there was foul play there.
Yes, and there were a pattern of violence. Manson suffered episodic aggression and outbursts of anger and rage all through his freedom. You know, he was released from jail in early '67, and he himself has written about a knife fight he had with a black dope dealer in the fall of 1967 during the heyday of flower power in San Francisco, and he apparently slashed the ear of this black dope dealer. And it reminds one of what they did to Mr. Hinman 2 years later. And there was a murdered big-time LSD dealer in San Francisco who was dismembered named Super Spade. I asked Manson if he knew who killed, I asked him who killed Super Spade, and he answered me, the King of Hearts.
The King of Hearts.
I think that's what he wrote, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I used to send question lists to him.
Mm-hmm. Sherry Ann Cooper was called Simi Valley Sherry.
Yes.
She, with a girl named Barbara, fled from Death Valley. They fled the hideout. And Manson caught up with them. There were too many other people around. He wanted to kill them. That's what the people that were with him said. But he caught up with them, couldn't kill them because other people were around. So this man named Manson gave her $20 for bus fare to go to Los Angeles. Kathy Gillis' grandmother was not killed. Every time I read more and more in depth about Manson, I find murder, related murders, suspicious deaths, suspicious disappearance. Tell me about Ron Hughes. He was an attorney, and you knew him. In fact, you told me before this interview, Ed, that you had an opportunity to go with him on the overnight camping trip that he never returned from. Tell me about Ron Hughes.
Well, Ron Hughes was what they would call, he was a very interesting attorney. He was quite full of life. He was a big guy. He liked to go to MGM prop sales and buy Spencer Tracy's or Chill Will's coat and wear it to court. He was quite full of life. I liked him a lot. He defended Leslie Van Houten, and he viewed his role as to get her off, and he worked very hard. He had a network.
At any cost?
No, he was an I believe he was an ethical guy.
Did he believe in her innocence?
He may have believed that she was less culpable than the others.
He believed that she stabbed Rosemary LaBianca only after Rosemary was dead, so it was a lesser crime?
I never really talked about it, but
Okay.
I know he took very seriously her defense, and it's proper in America for a defense attorney to take seriously defending their client. It's all right. I mean, it's a part of the American dream. So he did that, and he did it. He worked very hard. Anyway, Manson made a decree in the fall of 1970 that the women defendants were to testify that he didn't have anything to do with it and to spring him. It was a brilliant concept, because he would have walked and...
You mean if Susan Atkins had recanted her grand jury testimony?
No, she already recanted her grand jury. They were going to...
Then if Linda Kasabian?
No, Kasabian was out of it.
Okay.
It was the three... Linda, Patricia Krenwinkel,
Right.
Leslie Van Houten, and Susan Atkins were instructed by Manson to testify that they did it, he didn't order it,
Right.
he didn't have anything to do with it. And to their credit, the defense attorneys, all the defense attorneys refused to go along with that. And there were all these very heated sessions in the jail with Manson, where Manson started threatening to kill or threatening violence.
To whom?
Against the defense attorneys.
All of them?
Yes. They would the Manson people would come up to these attorneys and say, we're going to slit your throat, or they would threaten them.
These peaceful children that were outside on the ground sitting there?
They were partly flower children and partly knife children. You know, it was a very weird mix. Anyway, so they were threatening these attorneys, and so Hughes wanted to go to this remote place to prepare the defense. See, the prosecution had rested. There were all these meetings where that Manson had the scheme to get off, and the defense attorney said, "No way, Jose, we're not going to go along with it. They're officers of the court. I mean, they can't just take some weird instructions from a murderer." So they refused.
Alleged murderer?
Yeah, they refused to do it. You know, well, they knew what Manson was. You know, by then. You know, I mean, there's no. So anyway, what happened is Hughes took all his legal papers up to this real wild area called Sespe Hot Springs. I was his friend. He left a message for me at one of the bistros we used to hang out at, the Figaro, I believe, in Los Angeles, and said, "Why don't you come with me?" And I had flown out from New York to do research, and I got the message too late, and I probably wouldn't have gone anyway, but he invited me. And that was the weekend he died. What happened was that there was Sespe Hot Springs is in a gorge, Sespe Gorge, and it has flash floods. And there was this enormous flash flood and there were other campers stranded. So finally this flood came, and there was a bunch of campers, including Hughes, stranded. Hughes was had his automobile down at the bottom of the hill, and he had to cross a rapidly rising creek. The question is, was he killed or did he wash away? Basically, he was seen going back to his car to get more of the legal papers and bring them back to this tent where these people were holed up during this flood. He did not return. And when we went to his house after he disappeared, he didn't find his body for 5, 6, 7 months. We went to his house. We did find threats, you know.
You told me you have a copy of his diary.
I have an example of his diary.
Anything interesting in that?
Nothing in it other than, you know, Manson threatening to, threatening. Manson's whole thing was threatening, so there was quite a bit of threat. Not quite a bit, but some threats, some threatening language and so forth. So, anyway, but the only anomaly in the death of Hughes, I think I personally believe that he very likely washed away. But the anomaly that I've never been able to understand is that down in the woods, off to the side, they found a postcard addressed to Sharon Tate from something called Bam and Papa or something. I think it's Bam and Papa. And it was an American Indian postcard to Sharon Tate, and it wasn't apparently water damaged. The Ventura County Sheriff's Department found it a few days later. I could never quite. That's the only thing I could never quite figure out, because I went up there because he was a friend of mine and I liked him. And so I went right up there, and this place was totally flooded, totally washed out. The road was gone. You had to go in on a four-wheel drive car or a helicopter, and it was really washed out. So it is conceived, and there have been instances where Boy Scouts have washed all the way to the Pacific Ocean. So it is theoretically possible that he was murdered. But my view, maybe not your view, but that he probably died unnatural.
Well, Ed,
They found him months later, wedged under a boulder, miles down.
Let's say that it was fortuitous for a flash flood to come through there if he were murdered.
It was great for the murderer. Boy, it was like...
But what about the threat that Manson gave him in the courtroom that Stephen Kay, the deputy DA, has talked to me about, where Manson pointed his finger at him on a Friday, if I'm not mistaken, and he said, "I don't ever want to see you in this courtroom again." And hey, guess what? He wasn't. Isn't that a little strange? And then a postcard downstream that it's not water damage, but there's a major flood. And this guy isn't just found downstream somewhere. He is wedged. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Would you entertain that foul play was possible in that regard?
I certainly would entertain it.
Tell me about some of the cases that I may not be familiar with that you may suspect there could have been foul play. And to begin with, anything you know about Marina Hobby. The young girl, what, December 30th, 1968, up on Mulholland Drive?
Right. Well, the way I would judge, there were a lot of killings, unfortunately, that summer of '69 in the state of California that were of young people, mainly young girls, not all of which could be any way connected to the Manson group. But my rule of thumb was, when I was investigating this, was if the police and the homicide officers were interested in the case and were still thinking about it, then I felt that it was a case, and if they were thinking about it in terms of the Manson family, then it was worth digging in a little bit. And that seemed to be the case for a number of incidents of murder where they were looking to possibly to connect Manson. There was the first set of murders were in October of 1968 in Mendocino County. A woman, 8 months pregnant, and an older woman, one woman, Clyda Delaney and Nancy Warren, who lived on Route 101 south of Ukiah in Mendocino County, north of San Francisco. They were murdered, strangled by a type of strangulation device, a granny knot. I guess it's the type, if you move it tightens. I don't know. Thongs. Thongs were used like they used on the La Bianca, and I was told that by a police officer that two of the Manson family members were in town that day for a court hearing. They had gotten arrested up there. So I know the police were interested in linking the Delaney-Warren murders, because it's another pattern. One woman was 6 months pregnant, 8 months. Mrs. Warren was 8 months pregnant, and there were 2 children in the house when she was murdered. So that was one, but there was never any resolution made to the case.
Let me ask a side note. There was a car used in the Manson Tate, in the Tate La Bianca murders that was used because they said no other cars were running. There were a lot of cars laying around the Spahn Ranch. When I reviewed some film in New York, I saw a black Cadillac at the Spahn Ranch. You ever see a black Cadillac out there? Ever acknowledge
yeah,
it?
back. It was a clunker, right? It's like a...
About a 1954,
yeah, it was a,
55?
Yeah, it was there. I don't think it was running. I have pictures of it. It's in back.
I couldn't tell, but it was police investigation photos.
I have a photo. I think it was in back. But to go back to the Delaney Warren thing, one of the further interesting thing was that right after that they moved to Death Valley. It's hard to know, but nothing. So that's one that I know law enforcement was interested in it because they told me about it. The next, so that was in October. In December of 68.
October 68.
68, and then in December of 68, a 17-year-old college student named Marina Habe, whose mother was Eloise Hart. Is she an artist? Anyway, she's connected with the arts, and her father was a very famous writer named Hans Habe, who also was a World War II super spy for the United States. I mean, he was a legendary intelligence officer. Anyway, she was murdered. She was out partying with a boyfriend, and came home late at night alone and
about 3:30 in the morning.
3:30 in the morning in the Hollywood Hills. Was kidnapped. Her mother heard something, and she was deposited horribly killed on Mulholland Drive. And I kept hearing, when I did interviews, I had heard some rumor that she was connected with, or had spent some time at the Spahn Ranch, knew some of the family. I couldn't really dig much more up than just the speculation, people that I would interview about her. And then I know the police were interested in the case, and but Manson apparently had an alibi. It was enough of a serious case that they checked alibis, and apparently Manson, she disappeared on the 29th of December 68 or something like that.
December 30th, 1968.
No, she disappeared on the 29th, and she was found on the 31st.
Okay.
Manson had an alibi on her disappearance day. I think he came down from Death Valley to go to a party on New Year's Eve or something like that. He was in town, but not the day she disappeared, or so his alibi said. You know, who knows? So
he had collaboration.
He had enough of an alibi they didn't charge him. So that's December of 68. The next strange death is... well,
the following year, they had a girl found up there in the same place that Marina Habe was found. Isn't that correct?
I'll go into that. Yeah, I just want to get it chronological.
Okay.
We're going to change it.
Okay.
Might as well do, I'll never do this again, you know, it's like this horrible recounting of...
Estimate your time to do that, maybe 18 minutes, maybe 15 minutes to go through.
I can go through these things in 10 minutes.
Okay, let's do that. Let's go through that. I'll pretty well let you do it.
I only have one that you don't know about.
Let's go through those 10, and then I want to...
We're saying, oh, we're all going to die, you know, and she was worried about being a weak link. I thought, well, why are these people worried about being a weak link? You know, Sandra Good was saying, you know, you can't be a weak link. I don't want to be thought of as a weak link. And I thought, who is this girl worried about being a weak link?
Yeah.
You know?
So I just want to check.
And then she talked about her husband, Pugh. That's it. First time I met him. You know,
Stand by. And we have speed anytime.
Okay, so we have December 29th, 68, the 17-year-old Marina Habe, who was brutally killed, and then there was some police speculation and investigation of the Manson group. Nothing ever turned up. We go now to July 20th, 1969. You want me to get my glasses? I'll blur it out.
Just go back to Marina as you did, because just as if we just didn't do this segment.
Okay, anytime.
Okay, so we have spoken of the 17-year-old Marina Habe, who on December 29th, 1968 was kidnapped and extremely brutally murdered and put on a remote site in Mulholland Drive, which other bodies were deposited over the years. And then we go with respect to possible Manson family involvement.
Stop the tape a second.
What's the deal?
Dangerous.
I'm not
No.
afraid of these
No.
geeks, you know.
Okay?
We'll do, Mr. Saunders, if you don't mind. We'll just start over again, just so you can cut it and...
Okay.
Is that all right? 'Cause we
Just,
only
just
got
mention,
a couple seconds.
just mention Marina Hobby, and then I want to ask you about Satanism.
Okay.
We're rolling?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, we have spoken about the 17-year-old Marina Habe, who was kidnapped on December 29th, 1968, and very brutally murdered and deposited in a rural ravine area on Mulholland Drive, which is sort of goes along the mountain ridge of the of the Hollywood Hills, out toward this the Pacific Ocean.
She had been tethered about the neck, was stabbed about the neck. The pumping of the stomach showed that she only had vegetables in her, which was interesting because the Manson family, I understand, were vegetarians.
Well,
A
yeah,
lot of
but
speculation.
You know, but you can't. A lot of vegetarians in Los Angeles, even in 1968.
Let me ask
you
you
can't
this.
blame. No, as a card-carrying vegetarian, you can't blame vegetarianism.
Interesting term
in spite
there,
of Hitler.
card-carrying.
Hitler. Well, you know, I mean, I do it
Yeah.
satirically. I'm a vegetarian, and I can't believe that the vegetarianism has anything to do with the impulsivity to violence. In fact, you can
Oh, no, I
an
wasn't saying the
argument other way.
impulsivity. I was saying the relation that if they were vegetarians and if they kidnapped her or did foul play to her
Right.
and all she had in her stomach was vegetarian food, that would be the likelihood that they fed her because, if I'm not mistaken, she was alive 2.5 days after she'd been kidnapped when they found her.
Oh,
Let me ask you about Satanism. Is it possible that Satanism, you know, was involved at that time period with any of these crimes? What do you think?
Well, I think it's clear that by this time that Manson's group had come into contact with satanic groups, and
More than Church of Scientology,
and
more than the Process Church.
and I believe that they were tinged negatively by these groups. So it's possible. But there is no shred of information that I ever heard that links Marina Habe with Satanism, or I mean, her death with Satanism. And she was just a college kid home from the University of Hawaii for Christmas vacation and seeing her mother. However, you know, I mean, there that part of L.A. that there were, I guess, there were people that had places. And I think out on Mulholland there was this group called Satan's Slaves had a place out there on Mulholland, a little further out on Mulholland than where Marina Habe was found, however.
I've been told by an investigator, who you also know, that I'll leave anonymous, that her car was parked in such a way that she could not have put the emergency brake on and parked it by herself that way or had the strength to do it, that she was kidnapped from that driveway. The mother was asleep on the couch, and about 3:30 in the morning, heard a car and then didn't hear anyone, you know, trying to open the front door, and then got up and saw one single person going around and slapping the car and getting in and taking off. And it's kind of interesting about the police speculation there about why the car was parked there or whatever. Do you have any knowledge of any
I
of that?
don't have any. See, I didn't really investigate this, but this is a 22-year-old case, and they weren't able to solve it then, and it's going to be very absent a confession or an
Collaborating
insider,
information.
and it's really not in the interest of any of these killers to admit anything more.
Do you know why?
I know why, because they'll never get out.
No, they would face the death penalty again. An unsolved murder, wouldn't they? On an untried murder with no statute of limitations?
Yeah, that's the point. I really don't know.
But you're right, they probably wouldn't get out.
But you know, these murderers tend to get baptized, and you know, you really don't. Once you're born again, you really don't want to bring up unsolved murders. So it's unlikely that any of these murders. I mean, I'm just talking about the reason I'm saying these things is that you're raising the question: were there crimes that the police were interested in getting more information about and thought might be solved? And I know from my investigation where I worked with the police and did a lot of research that the police were interested in these cases that I'm speaking of. The next one is in So when the Manson family moved back to the Spahn Ranch in 1969, there was this kid, 16-year-old kid named Mark Walt, who lived there, and he was found all run over and like as if somebody back and forth crossed him a few times in Topanga Canyon. And I know his family was very upset with Manson. I think his brother went to the Spahn Ranch to confront Manson. But again, they never... And right around the same time, there was another killing that the police were interested. And she was buried a few miles from the Spahn Ranch, but in a dress that people recognized as having been there. Because the women had a communal clothes pool there. You were supposed to put everything in a communal pool, all your driver's licenses and your identification, and then it's clothing, so everybody knew what the clothing collection was. Anyway, they recognized this was known as Jane Doe number 44, and she was found on a Whitaker fire trail some distance from the Spahn Ranch, but I know law enforcement was interested in that. And then a few days later they killed Gary Hinman, which they were found guilty for, and that was where they first wrote in blood, apparently. And then they were the Tate LaBianca murders. And then the next possible killing was when they moved back to the Barker Ranch. I interviewed somebody later who said that he had heard that there were 2 bodies buried there, but good luck, because we're talking vast desert wilderness where you could bury thousands of bodies and no one would ever find them. So forget about finding those if they exist. Then there was a biker named Philip Tinarelli who was who died up there, allegedly a suicide, but they found his blood-stained car miles away days later down a ravine at Crowley Point on the way to the place where Manson's family were living. And police thought that was a real possibility that somebody knocked him off. And the only people knocking people off in Death Valley in those days were the Manson people. And then they were all arrested, as I mentioned in an earlier segment. I mentioned that they were arrested for conducting an auto theft ring. And then Los Angeles Sheriff's Department detectives put 2 and 2 together, and they more or less figured out it was Manson's group that had killed all these people in Los Angeles. So Manson got 2 people out, Sandy Good and Squeaky Frome, who were like the PR firm for the family. This was the first mass murder group that had sort of its own public relations group who sent out blizzards of press releases, but their real purpose was to figure out who was snitching, because people were saying things. And that's when people like this guy Zero, Christopher G. A bunch of them got out of jail in Inyo County, and they went down to Venice, to a seedy part of Venice, California. Then seedy, probably the
All
house.
of it's seedy now.
Oh, I thought maybe it yumpified and it was all $1 million houses.
No.
Anyway, it was a kind of a biker part of up against the beach, and
He was
they
playing
were
Russian
living there.
roulette.
They were living there all in a communal situation, and this kid, Christopher Zero, allegedly killed himself with Russian roulette.
Right.
Except there were, most of the time Russian roulette you have 1 bullet in the chamber. This was a reverse. I think there were like one bullet,
empty.
1 empty chamber. So that really, that's the Manson family version of Russian roulette. And apparently, he might have been bumped off. I interviewed the young woman who held him while he lay dying. It was one of the more disgusting interviews I ever did, but she described it gurgle by gurgle. And and he might have, there was, apparently it was, they were making out. I think they were making out, and somebody probably bumped him off. That I would suspect was a murder, because another member of the family told me, they were worried about his being a weak link, because none of them wanted to be known as, the worst thing in the Manson group was to be thought of a weak link. I mean, that's like being, that's when the organized crime thinks you're snitching to the feds, then you get bumped.
You told me previously that Manson was lazy and he had the girls do the burying, and they were buried in shallow graves, mostly.
Oh, well, that was the deal, I think, on Shorty Shea. The police were looking for a very complicated burial technique. What they did is that when they buried Shea, they picked the most moron place to bury him, but the easiest place, right up against a shale cliff. So they just sort of threw him against a cliff, and all they have to do is sort of knock a bunch of shale and stuff down on, you know, like, and that naturally falls down these cliffs. So, yeah, I mean, Manson he didn't do dishes and he didn't do burials. You know? He was the ultimate male chauvinist murderer. I mean, I hate to make a joke.
Helter-skelter.
I mean, it's not funny, and I apologize for making.
Who else do you have, Ed?
Well, another murder that the police, for some reason, really wanted to link to the Manson group was something called a woman called Jane Doe number 59. And she was found again in the Mulholland Drive, right? I think not far from where Marina Hobby was found, on November 16th. And they really tried to link her to the Manson group. I never could figure out why, and the police never told me. But I know they were trying, and because the evidence wasn't clear. Her lungs were clean, so she was from outside. They thought she was from Canada, maybe, and they were trying to link. They were determined to. They felt they could link her somehow. They never again, because you know I even have one of these horrible pictures, and this is they really they worked these. You know, whoever did it is a typical savage. But the most savage murder of all was, and the most likely somehow connected to the Manson group, are the two kids connected with the Scientology group on November 21st, 1969. This is Doreen Gall and James Sharp. They were living in a communal house filled up with people studying Scientology. And I was told by law enforcement that Doreen Gall knew Bruce Davis, and he may have even dated him. And other people told me that his bus, he had a school bus parked there outside this commune. Anyway, these two kids were grabbed up and really brutally killed on around November 21st, 69. And I know law enforcement for sure was interested in proving that there was a connection with, particularly with Mr. Davis, but you know, to his, you know, in the American system of justice, he was never charged, and there was never an indictment, and I don't even know if it was presented to a grand jury. But there was very circumstantial, loose circumstantial indication that he may have known her. But, you know, you look at the photos of this was really a horrible killing. So,
worse than the photos you described of Sharon Tate?
No, but it was, they're not, they're extremely unpleasant to look at. Then the final death of 69 was on December 1st that we've talked about, is Mr. Joel Pugh, Sandra Good's husband, who was in England at the time in a little hotel, and there was blood writing on the wall, which was very suspicious. And the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department was very, very suspicious of this. They told me that they didn't even do a Scotland Yard investigation. There was no Scotland Yard investigation, and it was just. And one of them said they kissed it off as a suicide. One of the cops told me. So they. And it was, you know, it was like a locked room. You know, I mean, how are they going to get out? The you know, I mean, it was a weird, the way he fell, I mean, there were all these weird circumstances that did not indicate suicide. I don't know. So that's the only one, that brings 1969 to a close, and then the remaining couple of strange killings was the Robert Salem, the guy in San Francisco that I mentioned that had writing in blood on the wall with Satan saves, and then the Zodiac symbol and Zodiac written in blood. Now, I always thought that if I were, you know, if I wanted to get my people off, I'd try to blame it all on Zodiac. And I always thought this was a possible attempt. It was never shown because a Satanist was arrested and confessed. And he wasn't arrested, but he was arrested for another killing, and he confessed to this horrible, hideous killing. And then there were some various murders on the beach that excited the Manson family, because I used to be with them, and they would get excited about these beach murders. And I ascribed it at the time to, they were just gore freaks, and just, you know, they were these terminal, there was a kind of a sickness that had eaten up their minds. So I don't know, I mean, so there were never any connections with these beach murders, other than I had heard from an informant that they were involved with this group that took pictures of these things, movies of these things, but I never could prove that. So it's a strange, and I feel wounded having given this exposition, but it's a truthful exposition, and those are the ones that, and none of them were proven, though, so we have to be careful to say in America, that's the American system. They were never charged, and their cases are still open.
Let me ask you this. Having done your investigation, where do you put victims? You're as far on one part of the political spectrum as probably I am the other side. Our backgrounds are that varied.
Right.
You're here talking to me because you've got the credentials that I lack in that
I may be a
establishment.
liberal Democrat, but I'm not soft on crime. And
What do you feel about victims?
well, I feel a great amount of sympathy. And I approve of, like, the right of victims to make statements at parole hearings. I am not you and I may differ, and I don't believe in the death penalty, A, and B, I do believe under certain circumstances that a killer can become rehabilitated. See, these killers will probably never get out, but there's lots of killers that walk out all the time from every state.
Do you agree with that?
Well,
Assuming they're rehabilitated?
I believe in human salvation. I believe it is possible to salvage a life in the course of a lifetime. So I think it's possible to kill somebody. However, I think there are certain types of killings. I think there should be like a scientific tabulation of degree of killing. And when they get too freaky, too weird, too repetitive, and that shows either genetic or such damage to the person that they are serial killers or show impulsivity to violence, then hey, lock them and they're in. I believe in life imprisonment without any chance of letting them out under certain guidelines. But I do believe that it is possible to kill somebody. For instance, abused women in New York State who have very abusive husbands are tossed in the clink all the time. I think there are a number of those women that should be out, but they have killed somebody. But it's in New York State, the judges sometimes send these women to prison when I don't think they should go to prison because they're abused.
Rabbit. Doris, I'm going to have you talk with him just briefly about in the airport and all that, so I figured that.
Yeah, it's tough.
Get a
It's really
student doing
tough.
it here.
Best time to shoot on the hill, like 7 in the morning.
Horrible stuff.
I've got a question, because I'm only 26, and I've read Helter Skelter and seen movies. Did they just kill people just because, they got off on it and they, got euphoric about it, or all these people that have been killed?
No,
Two shots, but
I just
Phil, I
want to give
guess
her
we're
an
kind of
opportunity.
moving on.
I'll just give her the opportunity to discuss.
Here we go.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And we are rolling with speed. I hear something.
Ed,
Wait.
Okay, here we go. All right, here we go.
Can you center a little bit more on her way? Right.
I'll have to pick a hair off of you,
Just
right?
go for the eye.
I already did.
Stand by. We are rolling with...
Ed, a question that has always been in my mind, and possibly one of the members of the Manson family has made a reference to this. At the time of the murders, Sharon's car was gone from the house, okay? That was the red Ferrari. Actually, that was Roman's car. And she had, he was coming home, and she had taken it to be serviced.
Yes.
Okay. So, in effect, did they or did they not, or do you think they thought very possibly that Sharon was not in the house?
I had heard rumors from people associated with the family that they did not think she was going to be there. And I couldn't really ever flesh it out much more than that, other than they were, for a while, confounded by the fact she was there. That's what I'd heard. but that did not come up in any of the trial testimony. Of course, there wasn't any testimony from them during the trial about the actual events. But it is true that the red Ferrari was in the being serviced, or there'd been a little fender bender or something that was in the repair shop. And I guess the speculation would be that they saw the car gone and would have thought, therefore, she was to be gone. And I know that she was going to spend the night with whom? Sheila Wells. Sharon was definitely supposed to spend the night with Sheila Wells, her friend, and then somehow wasn't feeling well and called it off or wanted to rest.
But who would have given them the information that the car was gone?
Well, I never saw any reference to it in all the voluminous police reports, and nobody ever told me, unless it was the caretaker or unless it was somebody who called in, or somebody that knew Sharon and that a member of the family could call. I mean, it was Hollywood in 1969. It wasn't so. It was more relaxed then, and people knew. You know, I mean, there were circles, and maybe there was somebody they could call to find out that information.
Well,
I don't know.
You know what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just one final point is that I don't believe there was any toll call from the Spawn Ranch to Roman and Sharon's house, because I saw photocopies. Well, and Bugliosi in his book says that in August, anyway, there's 1 month it's missing. I can't remember which month, but I believe in August, before the killings, the day of the killings, there were no phone messages from Spawn Ranch to that number, or numbers. They had, what, 2 numbers? Anyway, they weren't any calls, because it was a toll call, and it would have been registered with the phone company.
Well, what has always gone through my mind is how it was possible for that caretaker not to have heard the screams.
I know. Well, he had smoked pot, and he stayed up late listening to music, he said. He did say in his lie detector test that he might have gone out and back. There was an area in back, it was a wooded, up a hill that went up to that road up the hill. There was another road up there, and he might have run out there. And there was another path to get the heck out of there, around the front, kind of a recessed walkway. I mean, look, he might have heard things that says, I'm out of here. He might have run out and forgotten it.
But he didn't say that in the trial.
No, he didn't. They didn't ask him that. And when he was a suspect, so here was a guy, there were 5 bodies and this dazed 20-year-old kid saying, I didn't hear anything. And, the police are saying, give me a break, So they put him on the box, they call it. They gave him a lie detector test, which he apparently passed, which he did pass. And they did, they asked him, did you go out of the house during the night? And he did say, I have the polygraph examination transcript, and he said he went out, he might have gone out and back. Yeah, it kind of boggles the mind, because first of all, that canyon, it's like you yell in a canyon.
Echoes.
You can hear things. On the other hand, it's a guest cottage, and his bedroom might have had a little more soundproofing. However, Patricia Krenwinkel says that to this day that she went in there, opened the door, looked, checked it, nobody there. And it's a little guest cottage. We're not talking about a big place. It's 2 or 3 room. So
and dead silence.
Yeah, and if you're checking a guest cottage and your goal is to kill everybody, you're going to look in every room, the bathroom, upstairs, wherever. And he wasn't there, according to her. And she's the best witness because she's the one that did the killing.
The other thing that enters into my mind is supposedly they loved children, and yet we know that now, or we surmise that they very possibly could have killed a woman 8 months pregnant and was convicted of killing Sharon 8.5 months pregnant. Why, if they loved babies so much, why didn't they take the children out of the stomach? Do you have any idea? Did they comment about this?
Mrs. Tate, it's very difficult for me to just talk about that with you,
It's
because
okay.
you're the mother of Sharon Tate.
There's
you know,
nothing that you could
I know,
say that I haven't already thought about.
you know, and it's very painful for me to even think about this, because, you know, 20 years have gone by for me, too, and it was a very difficult time for me to write that book, and to think about what...
But what did...
Well, Susan Atkins speculated about taking out the baby, and she decided not to. That's what I heard.
how about the other woman that was 8 months?
I don't know if they killed her, and it wasn't likely that any women were present. It was likely, since there were thongs tied, it was probably a robbery, probably one or two guys. There were things missing. It was an antique store, and, you know, it was probably some couple of geeks, you know, a couple of guys who did it. And, so I don't know the answer. You know, I think the best possible... it would be nice so that you could know the whole story for them to just come out and tell everything, but it's not in their interest to do that, because they don't want, they want, it's in their interest in terms of getting free to have nothing more come out. So it's not likely that if they know anything, they will tell you.
If in fact these were satanic rituals, do you know in fact that some of the satanic rituals are baby parts are used?
I don't know. I've heard that, but they did not. I've never heard any that the Manson family did that. In all the even speculation from law enforcement or anything, I never heard that. Although I have read articles that they do that, and it's very hard for me to think about this, but I believe they didn't think she was going to be there. You know,
Well, I wonder, but what made me want to ask that question was simply if they had murdered one woman, very possibly, that was 8 months pregnant and didn't mind murdering her, and yet they say they are so children thoughtful, you know.
Look, you understand, they tried to blame this all on the Black Panthers. So these are really crazy people. And they viewed it as war, you know, they viewed it as a form of war, and it goes to point out when you so dehumanize somebody that you don't even know that they're alive, you know, and these people were so robotized.
Do you think it's possible they're still robotized today?
It's possible. You know, I have a lot of suspicions of the continuing mindset of people who would do that kind of crime.
I work very hard to keep these people in prison.
Well,
Because I feel they're still very dangerous.
I believe that if any of them are ever released, it should be as so that to a moral certainty that people are convinced that nothing illegal will happen from these people.
But you see, there's no guarantee of that.
True.
So that's why I say they must stay in prison. Of course, we both know that they all got the death penalty. The death penalty was overturned in 1972. So the only thing that I can do is hopefully keep them in prison. I think they are dangerous to society.
Well, and due to a lot of your good efforts, you will be granted an ample forum in the state of California and nationwide to make that position known. I mean, you're quite formidable and quite powerful in the state of California now, and rightfully so, on the issue of victims' rights. And you've raised a lot of important issues. And it's I'm not sure that I'm not prepared to. The only one I think could ever possibly get out is Leslie Van Houten, and we probably, I think possibly someday she could get out. I'm not collecting signatures though.
Well, don't.
Don't worry.
Okay, because
I'm not.
because her only defense is that Rosemary LaBianca was dead when she stabbed her. Yet forensic medicine tells us that Rosemary's fatal stab wounds were where Van Houten stabbed her.
Well, you know, extremely sympathetic to your position. However, I have read all the psychiatric reports on Ben Houghton, and I think there is some healing of her psyche. I don't know if it's enough, but I think if you're going to rank all of them as prospects for release, she clearly is the one at the top of the list.
Well, the parole board disagrees with you.
I know that, but I just, that's my own personal opinion. I don't want, believe me, I'm not, I don't want these people out, but I think that,
No, I'm not saying that.
She might someday get out. And I think
they denied Leslie 2 years between her next parole hearing, and yet with Patricia Krenwinkel, they only denied 1 year.
Well, there is a group of people lobbying to have her released too, I think. Are there a few?
Not that I know of.
There's nobody.
No.
She apparently has done some
She seems at least repentant
Yeah, she seems the
somewhat
most,
of what she has done.
she's probably,
Mr. Saunders, if you could be talking to Mrs. Tate and Mrs. Tate just listen to him.
Yeah, you can talk about anything you want, my
well,
dear.
Mrs. Tate, it's good to see you again. I hope we meet under less
More
stressful
pleasant?
circumstances in the future, but I have a lot of sympathy for you. So,
You know, the reason for the unsolved crimes is so that the...
Mr. Saunders, if you could just talk, I guess, about what you had been talking about before, a somber topic, so Mrs. Tate could be listening to you
And not
as
say
she was
anything for
before.
Doris.
Oh, it's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead, Onion.
so let's say something somber?
Actually, you
Talk
don't
about
say
your
anything.
book.
Talk,
Well,
The possibility of Sharon's car being gone. Go back to that. I just want to get some reactions with her quietly.
well, it's clear that the red Ferrara was in the shop, and that I guess Sharon had rented a car from Airport Rental, or one of them had rented a car that was in the driveway, because I would assume they needed a car. She could have given birth to at any moment, so that's probably why she had the car in the shop. She wanted, if anything, she wanted to have a good car on hand, I don't know, it's speculation, but it was gone,
And they never made any reference to that?
I never heard him talk about it. The Manson group themselves, nobody ever mentioned it. They did mention that they had Wojciech Frykowski's credit card. They had it hidden somewhere, and they'd take it out and
Prior to the
pass
murders?
No, afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. Tempting not to talk.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine the question she asked you about Sharon, her car,
Oh,
all
Jesus.
this. I want you to get into that mode,
Yeah.
and I want you to think about that and kind of nod your head as you go through the story that you're thinking about, yeah, it's possible her car could have been gone, etc. And give me about a minute of that.
Okay.
Kind of
take
nodding
it as
and
you
so
roll.
forth.
Not too
Anytime
much.
you're ready.
Not too much.
Yeah.
Anytime you're ready.
Contemplative.
It was,
Too heavy for me.
can't talk, you gotta nod. Just, was there foul play with the car? The Ferrari was red in color.
You don't have to nod that continuously.
Yeah. Just listening attentively.
And, too bad you don't have more time. You get to Washington, D.C. Nice time. Go to Josh here. Hopefully, I'll have a country to get back to.
If you want to, I don't know if you use your hands to your...
Oy vey, oy vey.
Oy vey, oy vey. Oh, yeah, you wouldn't know what drumline means, that's right.
I guess just kind of inward thoughts that you're thinking.
And then, when he's facing screen left here, it's not going to cut for you because she's facing the same direction. It's only going to work when he's looking
Right.
back this
Needs to
way.
work
Right.
here.
I think that's right. Maybe I tend that I'm saying something interesting. And,
That's good.
Takes you back a couple of years
That's good.
to what this whole scenario and this whole story is. 20 years gone by.
I'm just a poet now. See,
Don't talk.
No, sorry.
Just, yeah. I know it's a temptation. Keep talking, that works.
Trying to think of interesting things to say, not to
Yes,
make
you
them
know,
smile.
about all the research that has gone into his book.
Yeah, you made a lot of trips, I guess, back and forth to San Francisco and Los Angeles, up and down the coast, and seen the coastal highway enough time. you know, as well as you know your own home where you grew up. I'd like to see the Coastal Highway. I've never seen it. I've seen pictures of it. Like a nice ride, road trip.
Yeah,
That's a wrap. That's good. That's good. That gave you whatever. Tell me which way you're going.
Rolling, you're from here up.
Okay.
We have to be.
Okay. Just come in full on the face for just enough for a cutaway. That'll give me enough.
Okay.
You want a couple, do you want a little bit where he pulls back so you see that?
Yeah, I think you should just, can you pull back to get the back of the head? No, you're going to get everything. Don't do it. It's okay.
You sure?
Well,
You okay, or?
well, you're going to get everything in the room that way, aren't
We
you?
can move it.
No.
Do you want at least one of these?
It's kind of a weird shot because the angle is so wide. Look how tiny you are in the frame. I mean,
Yeah.
it's...
I don't think I'm going to need that for what I'm doing.
Okay.
I just don't think I'm going to do it.
Okay.
I'm not going to need
Get
it.
back another 10.